In the ever-expanding universe of fantasy fiction, Lord of the Mysteries stands out as a literary titan that blends mystery, steampunk aesthetics, cosmic horror, and Eastern cultivation into a single, tightly woven narrative written by Chinese author Cuttlefish That Loves Diving. The web novel first began serialization on Qidian in 2018. By the time it concluded in 2020, it had already amassed millions of readers and fans, earning its place among the most celebrated Chinese web novels of all time. It is a rare narrative that defies easy classification, neither strictly xianxia nor Western high fantasy, not quite urban nor purely historical. Instead, it builds a distinctive world that pulls inspiration from sources as diverse as Lovecraft, Victorian England, and Jungian psychology. The story's intricate world-building, morally complex characters, and philosophical themes place it in a league of its own, far beyond the typical power fantasies and trope-laden fare that populate much of the anime world. For fans of works like Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, Death Note, Attack on Titan, and Paranoia Agent, Lord of the Mysteries offers an intellectual and emotional depth that promises to redefine what animated fantasy can achieve. At its core, the novel tells the story of Klein Moretti, a young scholar in a late Victorian era-inspired world who becomes entwined in the supernatural after a mysterious death and an even more mysterious resurrection. His journey from an ordinary man to a godlike figure through secret organizations, forbidden rituals, tarot divination, and increasingly terrifying revelations serves as the backbone of a tale that delves into existential dread, the price of power, and the fragile boundaries of identity and sanity. Yet the brilliance of Lord of the Mysteries lies not only in its high-concept world or clever plot twists. It's the characters, deeply flawed, hauntingly human, often brilliant and brave, but just as often selfish, broken, or lost, that elevate the story into something profound. From the noble but naive Audrey Hall to the calculating and loyal Alger Wilson, from the haunted Fours Wall to the innocent Derek Berg, each character adds to the story's rich emotional and thematic tapestry, the Beyonder pathways and sequence system. Perhaps the most original aspect of the setting is its power system, which avoids overused magic cliches and instead centers on a dangerous form of supernatural progression. Individuals become Beyonders by consuming potions tailored to specific paths, each with 9 sequences moving from sequence 9, weakest, to sequence 0, demigod or godhood. There are 22 known paths and each one is thematically distinct. For example, the seer pathway, Klein's path, focuses on divination, illusions, and spiritual manipulation. The spectator pathway, Audrey's path, revolves around psychological insight and control. The sun pathway grants holy light and cleansing fire, ideal for fighting unholy entities. The Black Emperor pathway leads to domination and monarchical control. This progression system isn't purely mechanical. The potions come with risks. If a Beyonder fails to digest the potion's essence, they lose control and transform into monsters, known as creatures of chaos or abominations. Furthermore, the higher one climbs, the more alien and detached from humanity they become. Sanity phrase, time bends, identities fracture. For anime viewers, this offers a unique combination of psychological horror, body horror, and action, something akin to Tokyo Ghoul, Parasite, or Psycho-Pass, but layered with metaphysics and moral ambiguity. Beyond the Beyonder paths, beyond the secret churches, lie the outer gods, terrifying unknowable beings that exist outside the comprehension of mortals. These include entities like the True Creator, a corrupted force associated with madness and creation, Mother Tree of Desire, a manipulative fertility goddess, the Lord of the Mysteries, central to the story's endgame, a being connected to Klein's ultimate fate. These gods don't merely demand worship, they erode sanity, twist fate, and leave irreversible marks on reality. Their influence is subtle at first, but grows more oppressive as Klein ascends the sequences. Through dreams, madness, or divine visions, their presence echoes the terrifying grandeur of Lovecraftian mythos. This element allows the anime to stand out as not merely a fantasy epic, but also a psychological horror tale, akin to serial experiments Lane from the New World or Made in Abyss. The role of divination, tarot, and rituals. Tarot cards are not just decorative motifs, they form the spiritual framework of the entire story. Each character in the Tarot Club adopts a card as their identity. Divination, astrological alignment, spiritual summoning, and complex rituals play crucial roles in uncovering secrets, manipulating fate, or battling enemies. Rather than relying on brute force, many confrontations in the story unfold like chess matches, with each side reading omens, predicting outcomes, and laying spiritual traps. This intellectual style of conflict is rarely seen in anime, offering a fresh, immersive experience. What Cuttlefish has created with Lord of the Mysteries is not just a fantasy world, it is a mythos. It's a breathing, evolving universe with history, religion, science, terror, and transcendence all converging into a single narrative structure. For anime audiences, this means not just stunning visuals and fight scenes, but also a gripping atmosphere, layered mysteries, and the kind of world they'll want to get lost in for years. With this foundation in place, we can now turn to the heart of the story, its characters. Let's begin our deep dive with the protagonist, Klein Moretti. It's no exaggeration to say that Lord of the Mysteries features one of the most intricately plotted narratives in all of web literature. Cuttlefish That Loves Diving constructs a story that is rich in foreshadowing, multi-layered mysteries, and slow-burning reveals. The plot unfurls like a grand puzzle. Every minor detail eventually fits into a larger picture, one that reveals a world on the brink of collapse, salvation, or transformation. To preserve the thrill of discovery for new readers and future anime viewers, this summary will avoid major spoilers. Instead, it will provide a framework of the novel's progression, touching on key themes, arcs, and the direction of the story without spoiling its biggest twists. Encounters with the outer gods. As the novel progresses, Klein becomes increasingly aware of higher powers, beings so powerful and alien that human minds can barely perceive them without losing sanity. These include the true creator, Mother Tree of Desire, and others whose names cannot be spoken. These entities are worshipped by cults, feared by monarchs, and quietly influence the fate of nations. Klein's efforts to maintain autonomy, both mental and spiritual, become more desperate. He realizes that every step forward is watched. Every sequence he ascends draws him closer to something monstrous. In his attempt to protect others, he begins to sacrifice parts of himself, his comfort, his identity, even his relationships. Each arc builds upon the last. Plot lines that seem minor early on, such as a missing book or an odd death, later return as game-changing revelations. The story rewards careful readers and future viewers with deep payoffs for their attention. Lord of the Mysteries is a rare narrative that evolves organically. It starts as a mystery fantasy with elements of horror and slowly expands into a metaphysical exploration of existence, sanity, and divinity. It balances intricate plot mechanics with profound character development, never relying solely on spectacle or power scaling. Main characters and deep analysis. The Fool That Does Not Belong to This Era. This cryptic title is the first clue to Klein Moretti's true nature, and perhaps the best summary of his character. Throughout Lord of the Mysteries, Klein wears many masks: the humble university student, the grieving brother, the mysterious tarot club leader, the cunning detective, the mad magician, the demigod shrouded in fog. But who he truly is and what he becomes is a question that sits at the heart of the entire story. Klein is not just the protagonist, he is the lens through which we explore every theme the novel dares to approach: the pursuit of knowledge, the corruption of power, the cost of identity, and the thin line between madness and reason. At the story's beginning, we are introduced to a quiet, thoughtful man named Klein Moretti, a student of history living in the empire of Lowen. He is not particularly powerful or rich, but he is clever, observant, and deeply human. However, within the first few chapters, Klein dies mysteriously and awakens with the memories of Zhou Mingrui, a modern-day Chinese man from a different world. This moment of possession, or soul fusion, is critical. It injects an element of isekai otherworld reincarnation, but Lord of the Mysteries handles it with unusual subtlety. Unlike typical isekai protagonists who retain their former world's arrogance or overpowered abilities, Zhou Mingrui suppresses his own presence and allows Klein's identity to take dominance. As the story unfolds, Zhou's memories guide Klein's intuition and analytical skills, but they never overwhelm him. This creates a fascinating internal duality. Klein is always aware that a part of him is foreign, yet he never becomes fully alien. This tension between two selves parallels the deeper conflict of the novel becoming something greater without losing oneself. The Fool manipulation and performance. When Klein gains control of the Grey Fog domain and assumes the identity of the Fool, he begins to play a role, literally. He adopts a deep voice, slow gestures, cryptic expressions. In front of the tarot club, he performs the role of a deity, not out of arrogance but out of necessity. He knows that revealing his mortal self could break the club's cohesion or expose them all to divine threats. This theme, performance as protection, runs through much of Klein's life. Whether posing as a secret informant in Backlund or as a member of a cult to gain inside knowledge, Klein constantly wears masks. He manipulates social situations with the same care that a magician handles his props. His survival depends on it. But this constant performance also begins to take a toll. Over time, Klein starts to wonder, where do the masks end and the real man begin? Growth and sequence ascension knowledge, not strength. In most fantasy series, power is acquired through training, battles, or inheritance. In Lord of the Mysteries, however, power, real power, comes from understanding. To advance through the seer pathway, Klein must become more than a magician or a prophet. He must become a true observer of human nature, a master of lies and truths. This aligns beautifully with his personality. Klein doesn't charge into fights. He calculates, he reads, he eavesdrops, he predicts. Each sequence in the seer path brings new abilities, but also greater risk of insanity, of becoming a puppet of fate, or of attracting divine attention. As he climbs toward sequence 1 and beyond, Klein begins to lose things: his emotional attachments, his sense of time, even pieces of his personality. There is no glowing power-up, there is no triumphant transformation, there is only the creeping horror that to gain control, he must sacrifice stability, sanity under siege. Few protagonists in fiction experience the kind of psychological pressure Klein does. From early on, he's faced with things that should not be: creatures that whisper madness, rituals that tear through space, divine dreams that shatter logic, and yet he endures, not through brute force, but through reason. As an audience, Klein's core trait is his ability to remain sane when others would break. He analyzes, reflects, and finds order in chaos. But this strength is also his weakness. He internalizes trauma, distances himself emotionally, and isolates to protect those he cares about. And he lies often, not maliciously, but strategically. He sacrifices much his family, friends, even his name. He starts to fear that if he keeps moving forward, he'll leave behind everything that makes him human. Throughout the story, Klein suffers nightmares, mental breakdowns, and moments of crushing doubt. He teeters on the edge of divine madness multiple times, and each time he pulls back, it costs him. This psychological realism is a huge part of what makes him so compelling. Klein is kind, he is empathetic, he helps his friends, he shelters the weak, and he refuses to use others for gain unless absolutely necessary. But Lord of the Mysteries does not allow kindness to go unpunished. As Klein gains more power, his moral dilemmas become harder. Does he kill to protect, manipulate the innocent, to expose a greater threat, lie to his friends for the greater good? These are not abstract questions. He faces them repeatedly, and the answers never come easy. Sometimes he chooses compassion, sometimes he chooses survival. He is no saint, but he is no tyrant either. He walks the line with care, always aware that one step too far might turn him into the monsters he fights. Amon, the Fool of Time, Lord of Lies, the uninvited guest. Do not speak his name unless you want him to smile back at you. If Klein is a character who manipulates from behind a veil of reason, then Amon is the mirror opposite, a godlike figure of chaos, mischief, and terrifying control over time and identity. Amon is not just a villain, he is a force of narrative disruption, a cosmic trickster whose very presence rewrites the rules. Amon is a descendant of the ancient Zaratul family, born into the mystery prior pathway, the same one Klein eventually follows. But where Klein hides behind masks out of necessity, Amon revels in deception. He breaks into rituals uninvited, steals people's identities, teleports in and out of conversations, and manipulates causality with such ease it seems unfair. He is frightening because he's not evil in the traditional sense. He doesn't conquer or destroy for ideology. He exists to subvert, mock, and test, a divine anomaly in a world that clings to order. One of Amon's most chilling traits is his attitude. He is playful, polite, and eerily courteous. He smiles at you while dismantling your life. He jokes about secrets while bending time around your memories. In animation, Amon would be a standout villain, evoking the chaotic energy of Hisoka, Hunter x Hunter, Johann Liebert, Monster, or Makishima, Psychopaths, but on a cosmic horror scale. His movements could be unnaturally smooth, his eyes unblinking, and his voice always just slightly off. His ability to break the fourth wall, interrupting rituals or hijacking fate, makes him the single greatest narrative threat in the story. The Zaratul family bloodlines of madness and divinity. They stare too deeply into the fog, and the fog stares back. The Zaratul family is central to the lore of Lord of the Mysteries. Descendants of ancient demigods, their bloodline is intimately tied to the mystery prior and era pathways. Unlike most organizations, the Zaratuls don't operate with armies or ideology. They work through inheritance, bloodlines, and esoteric rituals that allow them to warp reality. Many Zaratuls suffer from mental instability, but it's not always weakness, it's a byproduct of seeing too much. Their madness is prophetic, often poetic, and always dangerous. Members of this family are secretive, manipulative, and often hide their true selves behind puppets or projections. You may think you've killed one only to realize you've only dealt with a shadow or a sacrificed version they'd prepared for such a moment. Their goals are cryptic but revolve around attaining the power of the Lord of the Mysteries, the culmination of the pathway Klein eventually walks. They serve as both competitors and precursors to Klein's ascension. The true creator, madness made manifest. All things come from chaos and all must return. The true creator is not just a villain, he is a foundational presence, a sleeping cosmic horror whose cults infect the world like mold beneath floorboards. Worshipped by the Aurora Order and other fanatics, this outer god is associated with creation through destruction, madness, and the undoing of causality. Unlike human villains, the true creator does not speak in words. His influence is subtle but undeniable: corrupted minds, impossible rituals, and divine visions that destroy logic. He grants power at a steep cost, turning followers into time bombs ticking toward insanity. The true creator's presence represents the ultimate fear of knowledge, that some truths, when known, unravel not just your sanity, but reality itself. The anime can use unsettling religious symbolism, reverse audio whispers, glitching visuals, and invasive static effects to portray this entity. Think of how Evangelion used angels and divinity, not as blessings but as existential threats, mother tree of desire, temptation, and corruption. What do you want most? I can give it to you if you bloom for me. Where the true creator is chaotic madness, the mother tree of desire represents temptation, fertility, corruption, and false fulfillment. She is worshipped through sensual, decadent rituals that promise power, wealth, or vengeance in exchange for surrendering autonomy. She tempts beyonders with shortcuts. She offers them strength without struggle, insight without effort, pleasure without restraint. But the cost is always identity and eventually humanity. The mother tree is horrifying precisely because she appeals to our deepest yearnings. She doesn't force corruption, she waits for you to ask for it. Her followers include cultists, corrupted nobles, and those who've lost faith in justice. She lures the broken and the ambitious alike. The genius of Lord of the Mysteries is that its villains aren't conquerors or tyrants, they are metaphysical inevitabilities. Fighting them is like fighting gravity, entropy, or the eventual collapse of meaning. Klein doesn't seek to defeat them so much as understand, contain, or rewrite them. Conclusion: a future masterpiece in the making. When we look at the greatest anime ever made, they all have one thing in common. They changed the genre, they changed the medium, they changed the way we think. Lord of the Mysteries has the potential to do all three. With its unparalleled world building, layered characters, deep philosophy, and emotional resonance, it is more than just a fantasy story. It's a tale of what it means to be human, to grow, to break, and to transcend.